mobile phones on silent. A very pleasant evening to all of you. On behalf of Marathwada Mitra Mandal'S management, principal, faculty, staff and students, myself Vaishnavi Sonavne and Abhishek Mote, 5th year students, welcome all of you to this insightful evening of Vantage Point 2022. I take this opportunity to honor and greet the galaxy of intellectual invitees present here.
We begin today's event with a poem recited by Pradnya Jadhav from second year. The poem expresses the experiences of an architect which he shares with his students to explain them the emotions of a space.
I was surrounded by 4 walls. "Hello," the person said. Replying to the old call, I got bit tensed. The person said, "You built my dream." I got startled to hear his utters. In a suspicious tone, I said, "Sorry to say, but I didn't get." Now the person who has called the architect is going to explain his feelings through some words. I found a place to call my home, within the woods for all to roam, a mountain world of great delight, away from cities' overseen lights, a place where children were cherished, a place where family was perished, a place where families had meanings, a place where everyone was pleasing. But in this land where I live, I revealed a past so dark, black, which is turning white. Thanks for this precious shelter, which is now turned to ancestral. I got stubborn, listening to the old call. His precious words melted my smallest flaws. He evoked me to create new spaces. This motivation moved me from my 4 walls to the little birds. Narrated the story in my own words. With a deep breath, they said, "Don't worry, sir. It's our time to change. To change this space, yet make it feel great. To change the node, yet preserve the old. To change the legacy and yet create more. We are the future to build the fields to the spaces, to travel from the smallest to the greatest." The architect is actually overwhelmed after hearing the words of his students, and he says, "This took me to the another dimension, to experience a nourished past turning to future path. Holding the beacon light, I formed new holders." Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pradnya. I call on Professor Raghunandan sir to annotate today's program, the Vantage Point 2022.
Good evening, everyone. Respected dignitaries, esteemed panelists, dear guests, fellow faculties, beloved students. It's a pleasure to have you all here today. I am honored for this opportunity to introduce today's event. As an educational institution, MMCOA tends to be observant to the changes and developments in our community and surroundings. We do that with interactive platforms, discussion forums, competitions, community outreach, etc. Today's event is one such platform where we seek guidance from our esteemed panelists and request them to shed light on the questions that our students have. After 2 months, the batch of 2022 will be stepping out of college and they are looking for directions to the pathways that they can take. They are riddled with questions such as, is it okay to start their own practice from the get-go? What should be the ideal duration for which they should be training under an architect? What kind of architecture should they be practicing? Should they take out some time and explore and discover their own areas of interest? Is the degree itself sufficient to call themselves an architect? And so on. To address such questions, MMCOA came up with this platform called Vantage Point. Today is the first occurrence of this annual event, and the theme for Vantage Point 2022 is Future of Architectural Practice. By definition, vantage point is a position from where one can get a wider perspective, and that is exactly what we aim to provide our students. A position from where they can get the broad perspective that our panelists are going to paint. Our four panelists are from diverse practitioners, each with a unique approach to their architectural practice. We have attempted to title them as purists, pragmatists, project manager, and innovator. Architect Bijoy Ramachandran will be representing the purist vertical, who are trained under legendary gurus, dedicated their every hour deciphering the secrets of placemaking, imbibed in their practice with their interpretations, and create architecture that engages all five senses. For pragmatist vertical, we had architect Sunil Patil, who has regrettably taken ill and couldn't join us today. He has conveyed his regards for the event, and we were fortunate that our event moderator, architect Rahul Kadam, graciously offered to represent this vertical and moderate the event as well. Architect Kadam will be representing pragmatist vertical, who are focused in striking the delicate balance between stakeholder expectations, minimizing environmental impact, understanding the nature of site and project, and creating interesting architecture. Architect Rohit Sardesai will be representing the project manager vertical, who are responsible for larger chunk of city's landscape. They hold a vision for city's development, modify skylines, create identity to cities. They are the leader of our community. Architect Vikas Pawar will be representing the fourth vertical, that is innovator vertical, who inspire the upcoming generations to think beyond the traditional practice, to step out, to explore and rethink the nature of architectural practice itself. We couldn't have asked for a more appropriate panelists and guests to guide our students through these questions. Without taking more time, I request Abhishek and Vaishnavi to take this event forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I request a speech to be addressed by our respected principal, Dr. Ujwala Parsoe ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. Respected members of Marathwada Mitra Mandal'S management, Executive President Principal B.G. Zadhav sir, our esteemed panelists for today's event, Architect Bijoy Ramachandran, Architect Rahul Kadam, Architect Vikas Pawar, Architect Rohit Sardesai, invitee architect friends, alumni, faculty members and students. We, as one of the oldest institutes in Pune, have been observant of changing dynamics of architectural education and practice. This is reflected in multidisciplinary training that our students receive beyond the curriculum. Students undergo value-added programs, workshops, study tours, different guest lectures that keep them aware for the current trends in architecture. We have been conducting international webinars integrating architects, alumni, students, professional educators from various countries, allowing them for a space to share their knowledge with our students. To make students aware of the current trends, we regularly invite practicing architects to our college. Our alumni is our biggest strength. The past 32 batches are very well connected with our college. They are part of our events, juries, different areas of progression as well. I am delighted to see many of our alumni as an audience today. Along with our Samvad series, which is a cross-discipline lecture series, we also have started a Fountainhead series this year, which basically helps us invite architects doing exemplary work to share their experiences with our students and have an interaction with our students. And we are very fortunate to have Pritzker Laureate Architect B.V. Doshi sir, Honorable President of Council of Architecture Architect Habib Khan sir, Ex-President of ICOMOS Architect Kiran Joshi ma'am, Architect Surya Kakani, Architect Sachin Akshikar, Architect Rajiv Katpalia so far on this platform. This year, to strengthen our academic systems, we have also constituted the Academic Advisory Committee, consisting Architect Durgananda Balsavar, Architect Pushkar Kanvinde, Architect Bijoy Ramachandran, Architect Rahul Kadam and Architect Kiran Shinde. It is always a proud moment for a college when our batch steps out of the college and set foot in the field of architectural practice. Vantage Point is an initiative to give our students an overview of architectural practices in India This event is designed to provide a platform to gain perspective on current trends in architecture and current concerns in architectural practice. We intend to make this into an annual event, like Raghunandan sir already mentioned. And to endure the learning of this session, we are also intending to have a proceedings of today's event, which will be shared with you all. I thank each one of you for being here today, and I sincerely welcome you all for this event. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
A privilege to welcome Marathwada Mitra Mandal'S Honorable Executive President, Sri B.G. Jadhav sir, to briefly address the Assembly.
Good evening to all. Today we are here for Vantage Point 2022. Mainly we are going to focus on future of architectural practice in India, and various senior architects and the students of 4th and 5th year, they are attending this function. The main motto is the changes are taken at very speed. Whatever was there, it may not be applicable today. Whatever is there today, perhaps it may not be applicable tomorrow. So changes are going to take place not only in education but every field of education, whether it may be commerce or it may be architecture or it may be medical science or whatever it be. For this function, architect Bijoy Ramchandran, architect Sunil Patil, architect Rohit Sardesai, architect Vikas Pawar, architect Rahul Kadam, our own principal Dr. Ujjwala Parsule, architect Raghunandan, who is the coordinator. This is very important, that how much experience he is having, because a person might be having a 25 years experience as an architect, but his students who have just passed may surpass him because of if he adopts the recent changes. For example, she mentioned about the chartered accountant also. In chartered accounts, the man who is just completing 55 or 60, he is out of the race because he is not accustomed with online process. So now there is a system of one-man banking. Everything is online. So in every field of life, the changes have come, and accordingly it is bound this profession, that is architecture, is going to change. This is not the only responsibility of the principal, but this is the responsibility of the institute or parent body also. Because the parent body may start a college and they may give it in the hands of the principal and can say, we are running a college of architecture and we are very senior because we have completed 50 years, 75 years. Now hereafter this will not be counted. Yeah, whether if 50 or whatever it may be, what changes are happening in the profession of architecture, are we going to adopt this? So management will have to change accordingly as though. So it will be the responsibility of the principal and the faculty also to go along with the students, because there is a gap between theory and practice. If you cannot bridge the gap between theory and practice, then definitely the gap will be wider, and there will be comments that the students who are coming from whether architecture or commerce or any other field, they are not up to the mark. So if you want to remove this, if you want to cope up with the practice, then definitely the practitioners, particularly from the profession, they should come and share their thoughts with the students. I do not wish to be in between the eminent personalities and the students of 4th year and 5th year, because they are very keen to listen these professionals. But myself being a commerce man, I can say only that if you want to earn money, profit, whatever it may, it is very important, and unless you become very expert in your profession, you cannot have the gain or monetary benefits. So once again, I welcome you all on behalf of the College of Architecture, and I hope the students will definitely get benefited from the experience of these senior professional architects. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your wise words. I welcome today's esteemed panelists for the event: Architect Bija Ramchandran, Architect Rahul Kadam, Architect Rohit Sardesai, and Architect Vikas Pawar. Architect Rahul Kadam sir will also be moderating today's event.
Architect Bijoy Ramachandran is an architect and urban designer based in Bangalore. He runs a studio along with his partner Sunitha Kundar called 100 Hands, the architects of BIC's new building. The firm's work has been nationally and internationally recognized. Bijoy sir has a bachelor's degree in architecture from BMS College, Bangalore University, and a master's degree from MIT, USA in architecture and urbanism. He also attended the Glenn Market Masterclass in 2012. He has been a panelist at the annual All India Undergraduate Thesis Review, the Kurla Varkey Forum at CEPT Ahmedabad, and is currently the design chair in the Department of Architecture, BMS College of Architecture, Bangalore. He is also an external moderator for the final year design studio at the Department of Architecture, University of Marathwada, Sri Lanka, and serves on the academic council of the Vidivar Center of Architecture, Mysore, and Avni Institute of Design, Calicut. Apart from architecture, he has also made 3 films: Architecture and the City, a Bangalore Perspective, a documentary feature he made on professional practice in the city in 2005. He has also produced 2 documentaries on the celebrated Indian architect B.V. Doshi. I call on Architect Bijoy sir to please come on stage, and I request Honorable Executive President of Marathwada Mitra Mandal'S, Shri Jadhav sir, to felicitate Architect Bijoy sir. Thank you, sir.
Our second panelist and today's event moderator is Architect Rahul Kadam sir. An alumnus of BKPS College of Architecture, Pune, Architect Rahul sir did his masters from South Bank University, London, and was a student member of AA London. He travelled extensively before beginning work with leading architects like Architect Bimal Patel, Architect Hasmukh Patel, Architect Kamal Malik, and Architect Karan Grover. He has been a director and regional head at Edifice Consultants Private Limited for over 15 years, handling diverse portfolios like hospitals, hotels, special economic zones, neighborhood urban design projects, adaptive reuse projects, etc. in a cutting-edge corporate environment. In his stint at ECPL, he was fortunate to create workspace environments for various national and multinational corporations like TCS Limited, Tata Chemicals Limited, MasterCard, to name a few. Since the last 6.5 years, he has his own design firm, the NGK Studio, in partnership with his wife, architect Nandini Kadam ma'am. The NGK Studio focuses on a sensitive design approach and is working with prominent clients like Bajaj Auto Limited, Life University, JNPT, etc. He is a strong follower of the need for sensitive design and green design to prevail in all sectors of architecture and design, whatever the scale. He has taught and mentored in several architectural schools in India. Also, he has presented papers on subjects related to design and planning in India and overseas. His quest for excellence has helped him be part of award-winning and published projects of repute in a professional career spanning over 2 decades. I call on Architect Rahul sir to please come up on stage. And I request respected Principal, Dr. Ujjwala Parsuve ma'am, to felicitate Architect Rahul sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Our next panelist is architect Rohit Desai sir. He is an architect with a master's degree in project management. He is involved in managing multi-location complex building projects in India. Architect Rohit sir is a keen planner and PMP certified professional with more than 26 years of experience in project management. He started his career in the year 1995 in the development of luxury hotel projects like Taj Group of Hotels, first in Delhi and then in Mumbai. In 2008, he moved to the real estate segment, first working with Raheja Universal in Mumbai, managing premium residential projects, and now works with Pune-based real estate developer Kumar Properties. In his current role, he is responsible for complete engineering and construction across Pune, Bangalore, and Mumbai-based real estate projects. I call on architect Rohit sir to come up on stage, and I request architect Girish Doshi sir to felicitate Rohit sir. Thank you, sir.
Our fourth panelist for today is Architect Vikas Pawar sir. He is an architect and urban designer who studied at SPA New Delhi. He has been a speaker at TEDx Eastern Metropolitan Bypass, Kolkata, and TEDx PEC, Chandigarh. He was recently invited to curate the exhibition on 100 Years of Architecture in India and was honored at the centenary celebration at the Indian Institute of Architects for his contribution in the field. In 2012, he founded Rethinking the Future with the idea to create a new window on international trends in architecture and design that looks on to the solutions for the present day problems. RTF is now known to be among the leading architecture platforms in the world with 40,000 plus projects with 20,000 plus articles from more than 1,000 plus writers from different continents. RTF gets million plus readers every month. RTF has been hosting Rethinking the Future Awards since 2012, which are one of the most renowned architecture awards. I call on Architect Vikas sir to come up on stage, and I request Professor Aniruddha Jogekar sir to felicitate Architect Vikas sir. Thank you, sir. With no further delay, we proceed to the most awaited segment of the evening. I request Architect Bijay Ramchandran sir to come up on stage and begin his presentation.
Um, Good evening. Thank you, Girish, Ujjwala, and MMCOA for inviting me to be part of this panel today. Though I have some reservations on the idea of a purist, since all of us are a bit of everything, I resonate closely with the notion that we draw deeply and widely from precedent and history for our work. Regarding the future, in our rush to address the multiple crises we face as a community and the push to constantly innovate, we often miss fundamental aspects of our human condition. I've organized this short presentation around 4 themes based on the writings and work of some of our heroes: Heidegger in context, Nelson Goodman in meaning, David Chipperfield in scenius, and T.S. Eliot in the historical sense. When Heidegger talks about context, he presents us 2 ways to consider this idea. One as a passive response to the existing conditions, the physical environment, climate, geography, etc. And the other an active engagement with this particular place, making us aware through the stasis of architecture to, as Heidegger says, the raging storms, the light of the day, the breadth of the sky, and the darkness of the night. This Greek temple at Paestum, here since 600 BC, makes us aware of these latent energies and their transience through its permanence. In these 2 paintings by Sudhir Patwardhan, we see 2 aspects of context. In the Irani restaurant on the left, the wistful Irani cafe owner has become one with his restaurant, hewn out of the same marble as the countertops. And the city, the image on the right, each character is a protagonist in his own or her own conception of the city, lost in their own inward gaze, making the city in their image. 2 of our recent projects work with this idea of making manifest particular memories and potentialities of their sites. This guest house for a stone processing factory is sheathed with delicately fashioned granite slivers fixed tentatively to the southern facade, almost like a timber screen, bringing us an awareness of the counterintuitive lightness of the screen and the wonders that are possible in this factory. It can only happen here and just this once. And this retail store on a defunct factory site outside Bangalore brings to bear the memories of that past through the preservation of some of the old peripheral walls, the gable end that carries the trace of the double bay shed, and the literal evocation of a metal framed structure, rigorous and ordered. And the experience of these 2 conditions, the old robust wall, the lightness of the structure heightened by the contrasting elements, the pristine articulation of the new, and the archaic weight of opaque and ponderous brick elements. Nelson Goodman, in his essay How Buildings Mean, offers up 4 ways for how buildings convey meaning. They can literally convey meaning through sculpture, text, articulation, and so on, much like our temples where foundational narratives are represented on the surface. The Lincoln Memorial has many of his quotes hewn into the rock that then surround a huge statue of the man himself, deified in this temple to his memory. The importance and meaning are literal and inescapable. Through the way a building is sited, this is number 2. So the first is the literal evocation of meaning. The second is through the way a building is sited, it expresses its meaning in the larger context of the city and its specific engagement with it. The Lincoln Memorial sits at the end of the Grand L'Enfant axis expressing in no uncertain terms the singular importance of Lincoln's ideas and contribution. But the building too, sitting at the head of a long reflecting pool, catches this axis with a deep reveal, the dark sanctum of the memorial. Number 3, we search for appropriate metaphors to express meaning through allusion. Though she spoke of Madurai and the idea of liminal space for IIM Bangalore, Utsan summoned the platform and the aboriginal headlands in the Opera House, and here in the Lincoln Memorial, through its literal evocation of Greek order, alludes to the origins of democracy and the sanctity of Lincoln's ideals. And 4, and lastly, there is meaning beyond architecture. Ascribed to the building due to their association to certain events and people, the memorial has become hallowed ground for civil rights activists, humanitarian protests because of Lincoln, of course, but also Martin Luther King Jr.'s Million Man March and the recent Black Lives Matter protests. We are particularly interested in the search for appropriate metaphors. Magritte's paintings show us that meaning requires an embodied engagement with the world. Neither are the image of the pipe nor the text below the real thing in the image on the left. He also illustrated in The Key of Dreams on the right that we are not passive observers and that we carry the key to unlock meaning in the world through our own particular trajectories. Metaphors come as a result of these associations and memories. In 2 recent school projects, we use Kahn's metaphor of the man under the tree to create rich in-between places full of light and air for chance encounters and the casual interactions that lead to real learning. These places of pause are varied in scale and enclosure, allowing multiple ways of inhabitation and exchange, both for gossip and performance. So here are some images. This is the IRA Academy, which is outside Bangalore, which is predicated on this section with all these places for congregation and intimate engagement. So that's the internal environment of the school, and more than 50% of that school is outside of the classroom environment. And this is another school also in Bangalore, which is Neve Academy, where again the plan is really about those spaces that are in between program. In 2012, David Chipperfield curated the Venice Biennale. The theme was Common Ground, and the exhibition was predicated on the idea that good architecture doesn't happen naturally. It requires a conspiracy of participants and circumstances. Like in Cyrus Kabiru's wonderful photographs on the left, we architects need to learn to see the world in different ways, our work a reflection of our empathy and creative assimilation. Louis Kahn too, as shown in these drawings for the Dominican Mother House, had to understand his clients, their budgets, and internalize their spiritual ambitions of the order to come to a plan which signified, unlike his first scheme, the inseparability of the private life of the sisters from their public responsibilities, mashing up these different spaces. So what you see in grey on the outer is where the sisters live, and all of the public buildings are in the colors at the bottom. And slowly, as the plan sort of evolved, it sort of mashes up these two roles that the sisters play in the private realm and in their public outreach, making a plan of incredible sort of communion. Here's us, so that's Suni and me at NASA on the image on the left. I'm in the middle there with the beard, and right in front of me is my wife and partner now. And we learned early on the incredible value of this conspiracy of participants and circumstances, working together in a group to create things of value. And that's our gang from 100 Hands in Bangalore. We had the great good fortune of collaborating with the English practice Allies and Morrison on a mixed-use building in Bangalore. This taught us the central importance of composition and the clarity of a plan, organizing structure, services, and program. Our interiors work to heighten the sense of underlying order of structure, revealing its Germanic relentlessness and creating moments of whimsy. Here are some pictures of the building we did with Allies and Morrison. It's a hotel and an apartment building jammed into one. And this is the Bangalore International Center, a small public building won in a competition which took an interminable 7 years to do and required the active involvement of the BIC membership, 27 different project architects, 11 consultants, 17 contractors, 18 distinct iterations, and all for a very small building, for a 45,000 square foot building. But I would like to submit the BIC as a valid precedent for the constructive coming together of many people, as Chipperfield said. The project shows the positive results of this long, intimate, positive working relationship, and the facility has become an active cultural hub in the city, appropriated in wonderful ways by the BIC and the larger community. There is a sense that this building is a real representation of shared ideals and communal authorship. We must move away from the seductive notion of the creation of architecture as a form of immaculate conception and celebrate it as the result of negotiation and reflection in action, a form of shared authorship and the outcome of a genius rather than a genius. So here are some images of the BIC, and that's Harshit with me. Harshit was our project architect and an incredible collaborator who's responsible for this building. This is the BIC with all of its public places. That auditorium of the BIC has now hosted 4 Nobel laureates in the 3 years of its functioning. And lastly, what is the historical sense? In a seminal essay in 1919, T.S. Eliot talks about the central paradox of the creative pursuit. On the one hand, it is to find the new, an expression of our zeitgeist, and on the other, it draws from the past for instruction, but also to understand the effect a new work has on the canon. Our work today impacts irrevocably the work that has come before. So one must constantly draw from the masters, from Peter Smithson's map building, like Neve, or Hermann Hertzberger's participatory space, like IRA or BIC, or to the more esoteric ideas like Kahn's form and design, Charles Correa's deep structure, bringing us collective recognition of a distant but shared lineage, and Utzon's notion of the beautiful idea at once embedded in but liberated from context. And looking at our incredible architectural heritage, trying to understand their organizing structure, clarity, and material construction. But there is a long way to go. I saw Akbar's tomb in Sikandra for the first time in late 2017, and before going, I did what I always do, which is to try and decipher the basic module of this funerary complex. It is easy enough from the sepulchral chamber to the outer extremity. It was easy enough from the sepulchral chamber to the outer extremity. The relationships were direct, literal, and yet when I visited it, that transition from the rich outer gateways and vestibules to the dark, unadorned interiors of the room where the great man lay was profound, moving, and indescribable. The tomb seemed to work like a portal, transporting one from one plane to the other, now in communion with the spirits. Do we talk of architecture like this anymore as a way to heighten one's sense of being and of all the multiple alternate planes that may exist? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I request architect Rahul Kadamsa to come up on stage and begin with his presentation.
Good evening, friends. It's an honor to be here, and I must applaud Ujjwala ma'am, Doshi sir, and Professor Raghu to convene this kind of dialogue and interaction, which is very timely. And it's I'm very happy to see friends, teachers, and fellow practitioners at the audience. After a long time, we've come to an actual function. So. I was interested on this double role this morning, so pardon me if I miss out on something. But what I've actually tried to do is, put a small story of what we've been doing. And right from my postgraduate days, I was very intrigued when I first saw Rem Koolhaas releasing the small, medium, large, and extra large book at the AA, and that kind of moved me that time. This was in 1998 when the book was launched at the AA, and it told me that there is a dynamism that you must have as a designer, and that kind of kept me going. So our practice has had a pragmatic approach across scales of projects in the last 7 years since me and my wife Nandini started NGK. So I'll just take you through some projects, and to start with, I'm reminded of a beautiful talk by I.M. Pei where he said that the Louvre actually was, the Mona Lisa is housed there, but for him the project was, the creative part was in the center, and quality, cost and time were the three forces which he had to keep justifying Mitterrand and his team during the grand projects. And in our practice also, most of the work is for corporate and institutional clients, and always quality, cost and time. These three forces in a way dictate how a project is done and why it is done. So I want to take you through a small journey from the smallest project. This was the first project me and Nandini did in Ahmedabad for the Gujarat Law Society. It was just 344 square feet. There was no budget. And Sudhir Nanavati, the erstwhile Supreme Court judge, was the donor. And he said, you create something out of the box. So when there is no budget, I think, and when there's a lot of budget, I think both times creativity has to think out of the box. So we actually were inspired by Dali's persistence of memory, where Dali melted the clock, and we had no budget, so we had some scrap ceramic tiles next to the site which we used to actually create this courtyard, which was actually a dump yard. It was a site marginal open space which we had to kind of rejuvenate, and melting the tree was the idea which was inspired from Dali's work, and it was a hit. And these were the renderings done to explain the client that it's a shaded place in the heat of Ahmedabad, and it's all done through scrap material. Even the steel that you see was second steel and so on. So a simple idea transformed a dump yard into a humane space. And then when we started NGK, the first project was a center of excellence, where the client wanted to demolish a 25,000 square feet building and create a center of excellence. And I went against the client and my wife that weekend and said, let me draw what we can do in the building by adaptively reusing the building. So we actually convinced the client that if we just have simple climatic strategies of having a water body and a biosphere kind of a courtyard, and all the training facilities in the center of excellence are around it, and have a courtyard which has got a solar roof, we can rejuvenate the building and save about 650 rupees a square feet in a 25,000 square feet building. And they agreed, and that was the building. This is the north facade, and we kind of came up with north facade facing glass, glass facing the north facade, and actually transforming the old into the new was so satisfying. I lost a lot of hair also in the meantime, because a lot of structural surgery was done on the project. But something which was so lifeless kind of came to life, and I think here the constant inspiration, subconscious inspiration through travel has helped me. So this is my documentation of Baba's work when I saw the Four Seasons at Maldives, and these sketches somehow started coming back into these spaces, and the notion of what Kant talks about, water being a spatial mirror, these kind of things start coming out in the project, and many times clients then start looking at you, what are you saying, but somewhere I feel if you educate clients, things happen. So this is the transformation from there to there in this project, and this truly was the heart of the project. Everybody would come here, and we wanted it to beat. So that was done, and then post-COVID, This is a very dear project. We've done the entire master plan for a 7-acre property, and the compulsory open space, which is 30,000 square feet, was literally dumped with construction waste at a site in Elpro. And with the landscape architect Bhakti Thakur, who is from Mumbai, we've actually converted that into an urban forest, which is 30,000 square feet in size. And this has actually become a place where people working in these offices, which are designed by us, this is, by the way, north facing, come down to co-create excellence. This is a place where R&D in the auto sector happens. And all this is done using waste materials, and a lot of the trees were saved. And it took us 3 years to actually give this kind of a lung effect to the city. We told the client, now your rental has gone up, you increase our fees, but that doesn't happen. But anyway, we are happy that a property which was trading at 30 rupees a square foot rental now can command 85 rupees just because of this kind of facility that is there, which is also the outdoor meeting room rather than a meeting room in an air-conditioned space. And then many of you have seen this project. Last October, we inaugurated this project, a greenfield project, Bajaj Auto, which is a transformation management center where everything and anything that is done to awaken the lateral mind so that excellence in their way of working is brought about. And literally the project is around water. This is a 37-meter water body in the windward direction. And almost 66% of the building is passively cooled. That's the first sketch, and it's not a sketch done later, believe me, to show you the similarities of the design fidelity that filtered through to the actually built project. And a lot of the things we did in the 6.5-acre campus, the footprint is about 44,000 square feet, are inspired from patterns of nature, whether it's the architecture, the details, the landscape provisions. And it's as if the building is connecting with the sky and the landscape. The landscape actually starts acting like the jewelry for the project, but not in a cosmetic way. We've actually used regional species and local, all the trees in the project have been saved, and there's a paradigm of time through landscape so that you know which season is coming. And then, of course, in our own way, the public spaces, which account for almost 30% of this building, have been naturally ventilated, and there is this romance of light and shadow which constantly happens, and the notion of movement to these bamboo pergolas, which are 6 meters in length. So we went the maximum width of using the bamboo, and an honest expression, because this building has to do with transformation. So we've used exposed concrete and very frugal material palette to actually represent transformation rather than a cosmetic way of doing things. And there's no doors to this project, it's all open, but only to the employees of the company. And then lots of detailing. We must have done about 120 working drawings for this project. So God lies in the details. We've experimented with bamboo, brass, exposed concrete, and even how the water goes, and each space has been associated with a navagraha which is inscribed in exposed concrete. So I think the macro to micro approach also matters. The building has to be well detailed for it to look good. And we had the true heroes for me for this project have been the crafts, women and men from 5 different states of India who actually worked with their hands on this despite of COVID. Now coming to the larger side of the practice, so till this for a practice of our size is medium scale. In the last 2 years, we've been invited for larger projects, larger competitions. We've not won a single one so far. We've gone close to winning and come second. But there have been difficult decisions where we've had to balance commercial aspirations versus ethical aspirations. And this is one project where there were 48 trees in the middle of the site, and we decided to actually, this was my first sketch at the site visit, to actually articulate the building above the trees, to save all the trees and actually create a very vibrant public realm. And the entire program was then inspired by the 5 elements of nature. And the whole idea was to create architecture as a frame, and the landscape of 48 trees that was there as a painting. So the building is lifted 16 meters up. And at the end of the process, we were clubbed as naturalists, and the client said, no, we want a dabba building in the middle of the site, and we will manage the tree cutting. Are you okay to do that? And I refused the commission. I have been, in spite of my proposal, being competitive. So I think these decisions are very difficult to take. And as I said, ethical and commercial aspirations, we have to take a choice. We chose to be ethical in this case. And then this is a recent competition, which again, it was a 4-stage, very intense competition for a research and development center in Noida. We came second, lost to large Delhi firm, where the client wanted a carbon zero campus. And our entire focus was to do a carbon zero campus using holistic principles. What's happening? Using holistic principles of green architecture. I don't want to call it sustainable, very simple green architecture. And we developed 2 options. The reason we did 2 options is when we've done competitions, we've done a single option, we've not been shortlisted for the final round. So this time we did 2 options. And from stage 1, where there were 30 architects, to the design charrette stage, 3 firms were invited, and we were one of them. We came second. So the first option actually is, using these proportions of the streets, of the old streets of Delhi, to develop a campus. And everything that you see is in a climate responsive sense. So the way the building is articulated is actually telling a story about climate, and the materiality is actually aligned to the climatic context of Noida. And then there is another option, which is the classic spine and spoke model, where the landscape actually, the building is lifted up and the landscape goes through. But in terms of the climatic response to the context, it was similar. It's a very tight density, 15 acres, 1.7 million square feet campus for 6,000 people. So how do you create the magic of spaces, variety, and balance? And that was the real challenge. So with this, I come to an end. And this is what I keep telling my team and myself. I think this is the direction we need to be going to, not the other way around. We need to be respecting nature by praying to it literally through our actions and acts. And that's where the Gurukuls, the students actually worship the elephant. And I'm reminded of one of my teachers. I worked with Kamal Malik after I was back from London. Kamal used to always say that when you are in a project meeting, leave your ego in the dustbin and look at what the project wants and needs in a sensitive way. And that's what we've been trying to do in the work we do so far. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I request architect Rohit Sardesai, sir, to come up on stage and begin his presentation.
Good evening, everyone. By qualification, I'm an architect, but I've never designed a single design project. Always my life has been on the other side of the table, trying to get designs into reality in terms of delivering the client its end rupee value. And I did my architecture primarily with a clear focus that I felt that it is very easy to draw things and imagine and visualize it, but if you can't do it perfection in terms of execution or optimization, then the end game is not always the best game. So I've always been on the uh, opposite side of the table, and my presentation also would show you projects which are in execution mode, less talking about design concepts and the theory part or purist design place. I believe many of the students nowadays, I do interact with them on some forum or the other, want to understand what is this whole thing about project management is about, what kind of scope do they have. So I'm trying to give you glimpses into what kind of scale of projects you would be involved. Obviously, whenever you want to start your profession, if you start as an architect, you will climb up the ladder from maybe starting a small interior, then doing one small house, and then as you grow in your age, you will be exposed to large projects. But if you get your project management qualification, the chances are that you will become a part of a team which executes large projects, and the exposure at which you will be exposed to those projects will enrich you. Like all my life, I started working from 95. I have moved from different disciplines, first into luxury hotels, then IT parks, and now I'm into real estate project. Every project has taught me a new thing. I have not designed a single of them, but I have tried to resolve those projects and get the delivery part of it. So I believe that if you want to get successful project delivery, and end of the day, it's the money of a client who is interested in getting best of the project at the cheapest price and the like yesterday which should have been ready kind of a attitude. Everyone talks about the same thing. So I'm going to explain you some of the projects which I was involved with. The first photograph on the top is the HDFC school which we did in a Magapatta Road area. This was a fast track 7 months turnaround project for a 40,000 square feet phase 1. The other project is quite remarkable project in terms of transforming the old heritage structure into a fort. Jadhavgadi Fort is the transformation which we did in 2007. The middle photo is Honeywell's corporate office. So as a though Honeywell is into IT parks and management of software engineers and so on and so forth, what kind of buildings we could do. And the right hand side is some of the glimpses of Jadhavgadi. So every time I'm going to talk about how from the client organization, because all my career I have been always working from a client organization. As a student, you must understand that there are distinctive organization sets which come together for making any project work. Obviously, architects is the design side of team members. You have architects, structural consultants, MEP consultant, they all part of design team members. Then you have set of contractors who are your executing agency or the execution part of the members. And to manage them, you have a client side organization. So based on client, how big it is, how organized it is, the client side organization will keep on changing. To give you a exposure, like currently I'm working with Kumar Property. We are hardcore real estate developer, predominantly working in the residential real estate project. So our team size is, we have around 600 engineers because we run around 30-40 construction sites all across Pune. We have some sites in Bangalore, around 4 to 6 sites. So typically every year we turn around 2,000 apartments to 2,500 apartments. So it's a different kind of ball game setup. Whereas when I was working with Taj Group of Hotels, we had a projects department who was responsible to delivery of hotels all across India. So I was looking after Goa, some of my colleagues were looking after Bombay or Chennai kind of a thing. So typically when I was a architecture student, we used to have this notion that architect is the godfather of a project. He would lead the project. Under him, he will get everything organized. I'm sure professional practice also have a word of clerk of works kind of a definition, that you appoint a person on your site who would be selected by architect, paid by client. For a small house that used to work, but whenever project scale has increased and client is involved with lot of financial investment by other investors, you have to have a project setup. So that project setup either can be a in-house one, which we call it as project management office or a PMO office, or it can be outsourced to a PMC, which is a project management company kind of a thing. So it all depends on what kind of organization you are part of, and typically most of the students who would do the project management as a career choice would end up into either a part of a PMC, who would be part of client side, or who would do execute their own projects, or you become a part of client's own in-house PMO office. The purpose why am I explaining this is, there is a transformation between being a designer, doing the project, managing on a hands-on management, versus you have a separate design team and you have a separate management team. So there is a big transformation between architects which were designers and owners to architects who are part of the design collaboration team. And primarily large capital intensive project need a change in organization and understanding of project management process by every stakeholder, I believe will help architects to work in line with ultimately project requirements, because end of the day we are interested in delivering project and not really interested in maybe saying that I want this, or client says that I want to cut cost, and so on and so forth. It's the culmination of everybody's best kind of ability to be given. So like for example, whenever you do any large capital intensive projects, you will obviously start with a design brief process, come out with a shortlisting of architects. Architects would come on board, they will do case studies, come out with a presentation. So this is a typical process where Jadavgadi Fort we wanted to transform into a heritage hotel. So we did way back in 2005-06. This was a new thing, new toy for us. We did a drone survey of a site. Architects sat together, decided the access. From client side, we came out with a project program in terms of what areas we want, what kind of facilities we want, what service areas we want, what guest areas we want. And through a 3-day, 4-day interactive sessions, we had set up a camp on site. Like we had hired one guest house near the site. Owners were fortunate enough to allow their bungalow to be used, and all of us sat together. We visited site, and architect came out with their initial concept of the project in terms of what they want to do, how they want to achieve, what kind of access they want to do it. So this was primarily done over 3-4 days to come out with a sign off, because it is always important for an architect to get a sign off from a client before he starts spending lot of efforts. Today I find that many a times because clients are indecisive or because clients are not well informed, architects keep on spending iterations, multiple presentations. Architect would be told that, oh, I visited this place, I like this, I visited that place. So their life becomes very miserable. In order to catch hold of them, people like PMO office would be a key central point to get all aspirations of client into a reality, convince architects that some things would be done, some things would not be there. So architect is also clear, and end of the day, client is also clear about his ideas and notion. So we came out with a master plan. We decided what kind of facilities we want, what kind of conservation practices we want to do, and it also gave us the roadmap in terms of how do we move ahead. So these kind of interactive sessions would be required whenever you want to initiate any large project. This was a project which was having a remodeling to be done, so it had lot of as-built drawings, conservation strategies. A professional conservation architect was hired to come out with what kind of methods and opportunities are there. In a greenfield project, there will be different challenges. Now, I will take you another example of a greenfield project, which was, I was saying to you that this is a school building, which is purely a commercial school venture. It is not having a typically Gurukul kind of a school design. It's heart of commercial hub of Magarpatta zone, where we did school for HDFC. We means Kumar Properties were client, because this is part of amenity area development, where we as a client can build certain types of prototypes. This project, because of bad soil strata and project needed to be done in a fast track manner, we went in for a pile foundation in spite of having an option to do, because only for 5 floors open footing could have also been the possibilities. So as a PMO office, you have to also look at various angles. It's not just the design, but how do you convert those designs into reality. We had to go for open footings, started the foundation work in peak of monsoon. In July, August, we started the work. Actual foundation started in September, and May 17 we delivered the first phase. So what you see on the lowermost photo is the actual photo done in May 17. These are some of the interiors which we had to do for school. And you, as you can see, the photos don't show you what goes into planning, but there were multiple agencies working round the clock. We had to do parallel construction. There is a concept called as fast track construction. That means you start foundation, you start getting the material prefabricated, you design your strategies in such a manner that parallelly you can do multiple activities. Now all these aspects will be part and parcel of a driving nature of a project manager, not necessarily an architect. We will also sometimes force architect to get into design, which helps us to derive those key challenges in terms of delivery. So sometimes PM office may harp on structural consultants or MEP consultants to change their design concept. So there is a colloquial language which we say that PMOs are jack of all trade, master of none. They will keep on pushing their fingers in everybody's domain, like whether it is design, whether it is MEP, but end of the day their goal is to deliver the project. So little bit theory, because project delivery just doesn't happen by engaging multiple people doing round the clock work. It needs some serious planning. And if you look at any project, primarily there are distinctive phases in project. During the design, during the construction, during the procurement, during the handover, every stage there are distinctive processes. So when you have a initiating process, planning process, execution process, which by far is the maximum time consuming process, and you have monitoring and control process, and then handover process. But what is important is that for each process you have to follow certain logic. What is that logic? That in design phase also you will start initiating the design, you will do a planning of design, you will also do execution of design. Means if I have to design, manage the design, I am not saying how do I design is not my forte area, but how do I manage my design? How do I keep my data? What kind of drawing registers I will keep? Where the cloud will be hosting my data? What kind of version controls I will have? All these needs to be planned as a planning process. It cannot be the subsequently that you say tomorrow that I will issue drawing, and without having drawing registers, architect is also not sure, site team is also not sure. So lot of thing goes in your planning of particular process. If it is execution planning, you will also plan. You will define quantities, define budgets, define contractors. All that also requires a planning process. So it's just not that planning means only planning for project. It means planning for design, it means planning for execution, and so on and so forth. So like coming back to Jadhavgadi project, because this was a restoration of old fort, first post our workshop we were very clear that we had to get conservation person on board. The architect came on board, she studied everything, we did major drawings. We were fortunate because my past college BKPS had some drawings of Jadhavgadi as a measurement drawings by students. We revalidated that, we revalidated what kind of strengthening mechanism we had to do. We went to such an extent that we had to get all the way from Rajasthan the Niru or the material which is required for pointing, because this was a 30-40 floors, 30-40 feet above the ground. We had to engage a gang of 40 donkeys on site who would transfer material right from the ground at the base up to the support, because there was no mechanism of mechanical transport. There was no possibility of putting hoist because externally all the walls were completely blanked off. So we had to think about lot many things when you start a project. How do you conserve? So you can see on the photographs that this corner is completely completed with Chuna plaster. On your right hand side, the work of strengthening is going, and subsequently it got strengthened completely, which gives us a real feel of sense of happiness, because I believe that architecture is the only discipline post medical fraternity where you get a sense of pride of seeing things live. If you design a building and once the building is completed and you say to a passerby that look, this building I have done, that kind of pride or that kind of satisfaction perhaps you don't get in other disciplines. So I am fortunate that I am part of that team which enables this kind of architect's vision converted into a reality. Obviously, some of you would be interested in trying their hands to different factors of PMO office. PMO office controls anything and everything which goes into managing the project. So starting with, you obviously have a project planning, monitoring and control. These are the key functions. You have starting from functional expert planning, which will help designers to draw out the requirements, how do you manage, how do you design, all that is managed by a functional expert. You have to manage the liaison. Nowadays, approvals have become a big pain areas to execute project. In real estate project, we have more than 200 approvals required in the lifespan of 3 years for project. Starting with obviously a development control sanction from Pune Corporation, we have environment clearance, we have RERA compliance. All these approvals one has to track, because if you miss any approval, you will be caught on a wrong foot by different government agencies, because you have lot of compliance to make. So you have a strategic key persons who would take care of these. And in large projects, people have a very loose way of saying that, oh, license mein kya hai, paisa de do, license ho jayega. But nowadays it is not like that. You have to still do the compliance and then manage the functions. But to give the compliance, you have lot of data analysis to be done, to be submitted, to be uploaded, revalidated, and so on and so forth. Then you have lot of strategic sourcing which goes in. So as a project management professional, you need to understand what kind of technologies to use, who would be the vendors to do it, whether to source material from China, whether to source material in India, what will be faster, what kind of costing would be involved. They are always on this catch-up situation, because the site keeps on demanding and they have to follow that lead. You have safety, quality, HAC audit, because large projects also pose lot of health hazards, safety hazards. So you need to be conscious on them. You need to track those by way of, like in our company, we have developed some mobile-based app which tracks in terms of work permits. It tracks about near-miss incidences, how much work view happened, what kind of labor force you put in. So all that data needs to be captured. Obviously, a big team goes in project execution, which is a hardcore execution supervision on site. And my always experience has been that if you manage material, if you manage labor, if you manage decisions and drawings and give it on a platter, site team will execute it much faster. If you ask site team to apply their mind or come under question mark, then your execution goes into a toss, or your final delivery quality also affects, because if somebody has to interpret, then the work supervision stops and he goes into interpretation mode. So it is important to have a proper approach or a process and systems to give these people those kind of requirements. You have support team, which is important because you need to lay various IT infrastructures. Nowadays, all the data from site gets captured onto a cloud. Third-party proprietary management information system works. You have point-to-point connectivity. You have data for drawings put on cloud. All these requires lot of IT support. You have a CCTV cameras installed on site. You need to monitor them from head office. So they require lot of support team. HR obviously is required because you need to engage professional, competent people. Design development we talk about, and there is a big way of admin and accounts, because you need to certify bills. Every rupee spent on a project because each of the project will run into 300 crore, 400 crore, will last for 3 years or 4 years. You need proper auditing. You need a ERP system to track your expenses, to track. Somebody would definitely ask you that how much cement you procured, what was your concrete average, how much cost went into brickwork. All these data would come only from a ERP. So proper organization of ERP heads will help you to get this data out. It also requires lot of digitization to get execution excellence on site. Many a times, most of the sites still believe on a pen and pencil approach. You have a paper, they will write down checklist manually. Over a period, that checklist get lost. Or a simple example that practically on our sites across Pune, 25 to 30 sites, we per month will consume around 10,000 cubic meter of concrete across various sites. Now you need to keep a tab, which grade we bought it, what kind of strength we achieved, because structural consultant is interested in whether you achieved that kind of grade of concrete to allow you to construct further. So all these concrete strength has to be digitized, and I'm very proud about the fact that our company was the first one in Pune to develop mobile based apps. So all this data comes on mobile, get sorted out, we get proper dashboards, we get entries done. We also submit to site a pre-cut steel. So we have a centralized steel yards all across sites, because each of our site run into 10 lakh square feet, 15 lakh square feet development. So we run into centralized steel yard, reduced our burden on inventory. We can manage steel. I'm sure as an architect you are not interested in these kind of initiatives, but when you become a PM, these becomes your key KRAs in terms of how much you saved, what kind of opportunities you got in, how much data you can assimilate, and so on and so forth. Also, we have definitely got the checklist, because when you are doing multi-location activities, you need a standard operating procedure. If you need to do a waterproofing in a particular manner, you need to get that across all your 25 sites. The best way to manage that is to create a checklist, which is a mobile based app. You need to ask your engineer to click photographs. So first there is a SOP document, and different processes you will get the photographs. You will also get daily progress reports. So lot of information starts flowing in. You need to manage that information, otherwise it will be like garbage in garbage out kind of a situation. So these kind of initiatives helps us to get on the top of daily working practice. We also use some of these new recent trends which are quite good for, as an architect also you should explore them. It's a drone survey of your ongoing construction sites superimposed with your drawings, and they will be superimposed to the degree of 3 centimeters plus minus. And instantaneously on this platform, if I draw a line on the photograph, I will get a profile of a site. So I will come to know how much is the excavated portion, whether my site has got exact center line matching or not matching, any major deviations, I will keep on getting it. And this over a period when I do, let's say once a month, twice a month, I will keep on getting the variation. So what was on month 1, what is on month 2, I will instantaneously get. So when you want to manage large scale projects, these are some of the tools. As an architect also, they become very important to manage your design process. And this can also give you this kind of a instantaneous recognition. So on your left hand side, the photograph was on 1st of March. On your right hand side, the photograph is of 17th of March. As you can see, the 1st of March, they didn't have the excavation at the bottom right side, but now on 17th March the excavation is done. So you will understand easily how much progress is happening. This also helps the consultants and architects to understand what level of progress is happening on site, why site is asking for certain set of information. Without visiting site, these kind of documents will help you to get into those data. And lastly, these kind of dashboards, these are our proprietary dashboards on which the centralized planning function works. So at any given time, you will understand how much is the total project volume going on, how many square feet area. For each project, periodically we use an application called as Smartsheet, where we can collaborate data and it keeps on giving us project progress photos, It will also tell us from our procurement division what was the average price of cement, how it has moved, what kind of material we purchased. So it's a comprehensive management overview. And as a project manager or as a design manager, I would not say as an architect, because principal architect has got a different role, but as a design manager, you will have enough work to get into it, and you can also enjoy the kind of risk, the kind of pressures which you will come in, because all of you are fresh graduating this year. I would strongly recommend some of you to explore into areas of project management. I would not recommend construction management to many of you, because construction management is mostly to do with site execution or site supervision, which is good by civil engineers or engineering degree professionals. But project management is a overall overview, and as an architect you can definitely get into a big dent in terms of first trying to do design management, then moving into procurement, then moving into project planning, and ultimately becoming a project manager for your project. With that, I would stop and thank you for listening.
Thank you, sir. I request architect Vikas Pawar, sir, to come up on stage and begin his presentation.
Hi, thank you everyone for inviting me here. And when I used to have conferences like these in my college, I usually used to sit at the back. अभी तो मैं आगे बैठ के 3 सुन लिया. So I'm an architect and an urban designer who turned into a graphic designer, or you can call web developer, writer, and one that I like to call myself is the founder of an online architecture media platform which is rethinking the future, and which is now like one of the leading platforms who serves the content or the information that is very much required in the profession. So I've been my name has been put here like as an architectural innovator, and I'm just trying to justify and realize what does it mean actually, because I haven't done any innovation in architecture. As per, I haven't designed any buildings. What I did is left architecture and did something else. So what I can offer you is my journey, like how many people usually ask me why did you do it or how did you manage to do it. So I'll just come to that only and share my journey through 4 small parts. So I'll start with the first part, and I call it the seed. When I was in 4th year of my college, I chose a topic called survival of cities in era of climate change for my dissertation. And architect Vinod Gupta was appointed as my mentor. I used to have long discussions with him. I still remember him asking me one day, did you write yourself the introduction of your dissertation? And I said yes, and he seemed to be really impressed by it and gave me an extra mark for it. That is when I realized that I have, a skill where I can write too. So, and that was, the seed probably that I was looking for. That eventually I taught my dissertation, and before that I taught in 3rd year design project too, just to brag myself. So I continued with the findings of my dissertation to choose a topic from my thesis. I wanted to design a skyscraper, and believing they are the most energy guzzling form of buildings, and I wanted to make one, the one which is least unsustainable, and calling it eco skyscraper. So that was the idea, and fortunately I got Vinod Gupta as my guide too. And as a techie I'd been, I learned Rhino and Grasshopper to evolve the form of the skyscraper, and somehow I managed to do really well in the design process. Let me just show you the kind of design it was. That's my presentation through in the final semester of thesis. And this project proved to be a turning point in my career. Aside from the appreciation by jurors and faculty, it got published in more than 10 different print magazines and more than 100 online architecture and design platforms. It got exhibited at Florence Design Festival. As a result, I was invited to speak at TEDx to talk about my project twice. And I was invited as a jury member for an international design competition along with Manit Rastogi and Gurjeet Singh Matharu, the same architects to whom I was applying for jobs. One guy from Times of India came and asked to interview me, thinking that it's actually going to get built in Noida, and then he got disappointed. All this happened within a year of my graduation. A lot of people ask how this happened. Honestly, I didn't know the answer back then. I thought it was some magic that had happened, but now I know. I was good at design, software, or creating beautiful renders, but there were two most important things that played a big role. First being presentation. The skill I learned through an elective by Martin Khosla, who is the son of Sir Romy Khosla, who usually participates in a lot of design competitions and wins them. And second important thing was the writing. When I submitted my thesis project for the first time on an online portal, I remember it was Inhabited, I had my project ready to publish, with project explanation well in detail, renders anyone would love to share, and the design which won the best skyscraper award by all architecture community. And here I'm telling you an industry secret, like the whole publishing industry, be it online or offline, they just love ready to publish projects. They crave for it, and my project had it. Apart from this, I didn't have any fancy name for my project. I just named it Eco Skyscraper, which worked wonders on search engines. Anyone who would search for skyscraper would get to see my project. So it eventually got viral from one publishing platform to the other, and that's how it got published on so many platforms. So now I'll come to the next part of the story. It's called the STEM. I started attending architecture conferences and I realized that every other conference I used to see big architects talking about their designs, and novice architects like me would come to listen to them. And I began to realize that we are a very confined community. We do talk a lot about society and bringing change, but a large part of society doesn't even know if we are architects or architecture. Because we never really talked about architecture to society or general masses. All this while, what kept me on the track was my interest in sustainability, writing, and a lot of good projects happened worldwide. That used to give me some hope. I used to share all these projects with my friends over email every other day. And some of my friends suggested that I start posting them somewhere like a Facebook page, so where they could read it and avoid any spam in their emails. So I just made one and named it Rethinking the Future. And I remember someone telling me this could be an Indian Arc Daily, a collection of good projects, and that struck me. Immediately I started building my website. I realized that you cannot search for content on any social media platform. You can search either for people or places, but not the content. So I had to have a website for that. And since I had very few resources, so I started to learning how to make a website, and I developed this on WordPress, which is not very difficult. Anyone can do it actually. And I started enjoying it. I also started an awards program for students by the name of International Architecture Thesis Awards, and I received some crazy projects. I invited architects like Vinod Gupta, Chitra Vishwanath, and Anna Heringer as jury members. 1 month after the results were announced, I was casually searching for the winner's name on the Google, and the results were surprising. A lot of universities have mentioned their success on their portal, like this is how their students have been winning in the professional field, and many students wrote back for recommendations, and they were getting admissions in prestigious colleges like Ivy Leagues. So this was something that I never imagined. Like students especially were getting benefited something like this that I was doing, and that gave me a kick. It gave me the signs that I was on the right track. I didn't know where it would lead, but it felt all right. I used to invite projects for publishing through emails, and most of the projects that I used to get were usually the images. So I used to write about them and then publish them. In 2014, I started to working on RTF full time, and thinking that it would be a beginning of something great. So over the years, Rethink the Future awards were gaining credibility, but the platform in general was not gaining any traffic. When I used to search for projects on Google that I was publishing on RTF, I used to see them on other platforms like Architizer or World Architecture Community or Arkello, and this was frustrating. I meant only the people who were getting their work published on RTF were getting to know about RTF and no one else. It went like for complete 1 year, and I realized I needed a break or probably a shift in my career. So I decided to join Urban Design Masters in SPA Delhi. Little did I know what God had planned for me. Now this brings us to the third part of my journey, what I call the tree. Actually, this was the first website that I designed, RTF. So it just had home, sustainability, competition, magazine, and contact. And this was the International Architecture Thesis award page. Coming to the third part, I joined my urban design in 2015 and the course was eye-opening for me. I happened to read about everything that constitutes our cities, from the smallest pavement tile to the large public plazas, and suddenly I could see there was a lot that needed to be written about. And that's when I started penning articles for RTF. Not to brag, but today RTF has more than 25,000 articles that students and professionals so passionately read and tell us how they helped them. Masters ended on a high note and I was full of energy and plans for RTF. This was the time to turn an idea into a business. I started investing time in learning business management, brand building, social media, digital marketing, and most importantly, search engine optimization. These things might sound alien to designers, but I highly recommend these learnings to all practicing architects too. We live in a digital era, and if we don't have our presence, that means we are losing on a lot of potential clients. If someone is searching for clients in their city and they don't get to see your name, you are losing on clients. If someone is reading about some architectural project in their local newspaper and that's not you, you are losing on clients. If someone follows 3-4 architects on Instagram and you are not one of them, you are losing on clients. And if someone visit your website and don't get to see a list of publications or some recognition from awards, you are again losing on clients. I can give separate lecture on topics like brand building and how to grow your design firm and all that, and that will take another hour, but let's not do it today. Anyways, I knew I couldn't write alone if I were to grow RTF, and that's when I started creating the process for each task, right from inviting projects, curating them, writing about them, to publishing on website. And also, like, I could broadly identify the articles under 30 categories. So what all sort of information do we need to put in each of these? What sort of cover images do we need to produce? Right from the font size to the type of graphics to be used on covers. I got everything in a system. And then I started to create a team. I created a writing training program where anyone who had an interest in writing could join for free. And by now we have more than 1,000 writers who have written their articles on RTF through that program only. I got the editorial, graphics, research, SEO, and publishing team in place, and everything that we were writing were all guided by the main objective, which was to bridge the information gap between architecture community and the society. And I would like to quickly share a few milestones that RTF has achieved. Well, this is the site right now. So we have been hosting awards for more than 10 years, and architects like Zahadi Architects, UN Studio, Ecom, and Gensler, and many others have been the previous winners of these awards. We have like more than 1 million visitors every month now, and published more than 50,000 projects on site and more than 25,000 articles with 1,000 writers. And now when anyone search for architects in a city like Pune or let's say Chicago, they get to see the first link from RTF. Like this is a screenshot from a Google search, architects in Pune. And after the ads, you will get to see the architects in Chicago list by RTF only. So we worked really hard on how we get to, what we were writing was good, but if it's not reaching the people, then the purpose is half solved. So we really invested a good time and good research how we can do it so that we can reach people effectively. And now it does feel surreal sometimes. It all started from a very small idea, and today RTF stands at the 10th rank globally in the list of architecture and design websites. So this is a platform called SimilarWeb, which is the one of the most trusted platform who rank websites globally under different categories, and I would like to share the list with you. Like on 10th there is RTF, on 11th you can see Archinect, 12th Arkello, 13th Architecture. I am sure you must have read all these names somewhere down the line. Domus is on 23, World Architecture Community is on 50th. So that's how we've been doing so far. And let me come to the last and the fourth part of my journey, what I call the beginning of the orchard. During lockdown, we started another venture called EduWith, an online platform offering self-paced courses for architects and designers. We cover topics that are usually missed in architecture school but are of immense importance both in architecture and the years after, like how to design your architecture portfolio, or how to do well in your thesis, or design specialization courses for students like landscape architecture, urban design, and many more. And not just for students, we have been creating courses for professionals too, like how to make a brand out of your architecture firm, or how to grow your business for a design firm. So things like that we have been researching in-house and developing these courses with collaboration of academicians, professionals, sound designers, motion graphic designers, so that the learning is engaging. And I think I can talk another 20 minutes for EduWeek, and I'll keep that for some other day. My journey so far has been fulfilling, and I have many seeds in my mind and desire to plant many more trees in the orchard. But little do I know what God has plans for me. So that was my time, and a good evening to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I request all the panelists to come up on the stage and be seated. Now I request the moderator of the event, Architect Rahul Kadamsa, to host the question answer session with the panelists.
So, good evening again. Very interesting presentations and very dynamic views on the profession. And I think lots to learn from, not only as a practicing professional, but I'm sure the students and everybody in the audience must be getting a lot of vitamins. So, with this, we start the panel discussion where there are quite a few questions we have deliberated, and what I'll do is I'll ask a question, and then each of the panelists I'm also a panelist now, so maybe I'll reflect on the question last, and then I'll throw these questions open to the audience, because we have practicing professionals, academicians, students also. So it'll be good to hear their views and observations on the same. So the first question is on, we study for 5 years and we graduate out of college. But how do we really identify as an architect in today's times, considering these dynamic situations that are there, where everybody has a role to play, So I would like to know from all of you your observations and views on that.
Okay, so I believe that out of 100%, maybe 5 to 10% final year students know what they want to do. 90% students are still not decided as to what they want to do. Though architecture course offers lot of opportunities over 5 years to do internship, to do summer training, to get associated with some sort of symposium, or maybe help out the seniors to complete their coursework. And the area of interest would be known. Do I want to be into a field which is technology driven? Do I want to be in the field of design driven? Do I want to be really going into masters on immediate basis, or should I work and then try looking out for masters? I guess it's not a mathematical formula that 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. Each person has to realize it on his own. Maybe the best part would be to get associated with different interest groups, try and learn something during internship, or maybe take a 1 year break and do every 3 months different options. Some of the people would not have that kind of options left out. Then masters in a general course and then subsequent specialization is also a possibility. But I believe that this journey will continue throughout your career. It's not a 2 plus 2 kind of a formula. That's what I believe.
Yeah, it's a very tough question. It reminds me of that wonderful essay that Malcolm Gladwell wrote about Cézanne and Picasso. That Picasso knew when he was 12 that he was the great artist and found his voice. Cézanne waited till he was 70 to realize what he was doing and to get the recognition that he deserved. So I don't know, one waits for it, and I guess I don't know what the route is. I mean, some people say that you have to figure out who your mentor is, you find your guru, and then you go and work there and you discover what it is you want to do, and it's accidental in a way. Others say you exactly what he just said, which is you try a lot of things, different things, you expose yourself to different things, and then maybe something clicks and you find your niche. Both are fraught with problems or challenges, because you don't know when the light turns on, and unfortunately that's the fact. I mean, all of us, in fact, I don't know about the other two panelists or Rahul, but it is I mean, without sounding too despondent about it, it is a bit every time there's a new project, you're going back to the starting of things, and it is I don't know, the burden of history is on you, and I don't know whether that's the right way to practice. But one wants to do something meaningful, and so that then makes you think about, or makes you pause and consider. And so things take time, I guess. But sometimes the genie comes early, so maybe when you get out of college, you have the lights turn on. Like you meet a mentor early on in college, someone who sort of turns that thing on. If I can just, if you allow me, I'll tell you a funny story. Madhura Premathilake was in Bangalore, and he's a very very well-known Sri Lankan architect, and someone asked him, when did the lights turn on? And he says that when the non-alignment movement came to, the non-alignment conference came to Sri Lanka, to Colombo, it was a huge event. So Gaddafi and Indira Gandhi and all of these leaders of the non-aligned movement, they were all in Sri Lanka. And while the dignitaries were in Sri Lanka, they were driving around in these incredibly beautiful limousines, these black limousines. And then after the conference, there was, they were giving away the limousines, and Madhura was joking, of course, but he said that at the auction, the first limousine was bought by an architect, and that's when Madhura's lights turned on. So I want to be an architect because I want to. So anyway, I don't know when the thing sort of aligns, but yeah, that's.
I think through our 5-year degree, we somewhere down the line realize what all other interests do we have apart from designing. It's just that we don't get the time to explore them. And we think like after doing a degree of 5 years, it would be a risk to, leave architecture for a year and then go into a completely different direction, and then it'll be difficult to come back also. So what I think is probably what we can do is we can try out these options during our internship time. Like if we have, many colleges have adopted 1 year internship program. So if out of that, if 9 months, suppose it you give for design education or design internship, you can try 3 months for 3 different interests maybe. And then you will eventually know what sort of interest you are more inclined towards. And also one more thing, like I think we all have certain egos. Like when we become an architect, we got an ego of an architect, and similarly we have different egos, like an ego of a photographer or a writer or something like that. So eventually you will see which ego surpasses all the other egos, and that's the field that you choose. So maybe you need to find which one is offending you most, like a bad photography or a bad building. So that will give you the answer.
Interesting. I'm kind of reminded of a very famous incident that Renzo Piano narrates. He says that when I start the day, I'm a designer, then I become an accountant by afternoon, then post lunch I'm an lawyer, and then I'm an activist. And today I'm sure all of us in some ways are juggling these things on a daily basis, and I endorse his point about brand building, understanding, management. I mean, it's very important in today's practice. But I think, and this is for the students, I was also a student, but the dynamics were a little different then. But with this global economy and instant food and fast change, I think patience is very, very important. So many times, in the office, comparisons are made with IT profession or ITES profession. Architecture is not like an ITS profession. I mean, everything needs time. So you have the analogy for me is like we can't be an IPL player from day one. You have to season yourself, and then once you're seasoned, then you can play all formats of the game. So I think that is very important, I feel. So that conditioning and that dynamism to bring it takes time. So I would now ask the audience, so maybe Kadre sir could reflect his views, or Darab sir, the other people who taught us. So I would like to hear their views also. Kushru is also there. You could reflect on something. Ravi here, whoever, please.
I'm just responding to what Vikas said. I had this very interesting experience with my own daughter who studied at Srishti. And during her foundation course, they had a very interesting format. And she did what is called as Sangama, which is like a confluence, it's like a multidisciplinary design, multidisciplinary education. So they had, I think they had for the entire year, they had modules, and for each module they would take like 1 month, or for some 3 weeks they would be taught only photography, and then 3 weeks they would be taught only sketching. And sometime in the mid of each of these modules, when we used to chat on the phone, she would say, Baba, photography is my thing, that's all I'm going to do. And then the next time it would be just sketching, and then the next time. So I think it's important for all of us to, like you said, to perhaps explore different things. And many of us are lucky to find exactly what you want to do. And but it's important to understand what you definitely don't want to do. So it's important to wake up with a smile on your face rather than shit, I want to go to office and do the same thing all over again. That's a comment.
What I think is in the college at third year level, your professors who are teaching you, they should, they know all the students, and they should realize that particular student, whether he is good in this thing, that thing, and then they can further develop that student accordingly. But what I see that there is a standard format for submission and other thing, no? And recently I came up with one student who was having a training with me. She after 6 months she will be graduated, but not at all interested in architecture. I said, how come then you joined an architecture course? But she was good at writing, novel writing, then poem writing, other thing, very good. And she said, you should go for that. No, I want to become an architect first, and then I will go post-graduation in that. I was surprised because whatever taught in first year also, she was not been able to transfer into drawings. I think there I found that whether something is missing in the college. At the third year, say first year, second year, okay, they were just coming to know what is architecture, but at third year level, certainly what is architecture they are knowing. So from then onward, there has to be some branching or something like that for such students, so that when they go for post-graduation, they are definite that which branch should I take.
First of all, congratulations, Vikas. It was a wonderful presentation, and I was really impressed by the way you spoke about your life, and you changed directions. At college, all our energies, I mean, the focus is on design and how best you could design. And every student who feels that he has some design into him, he wants to become a Korea or a Doshi or a Convey, and we aspire to be that. And then we pass out, we graduate, maybe with flying colors, we do our masters, and then we wait and we struggle. And then we kind of aspire for big projects, good projects. But there's a long way to go, and then we spend around 10-15 years struggling, and then that whole energy is lost somewhere, I feel. I mean, very few are blessed with having a good background where you start getting projects and you shine in your career. So that is one part. And apparently I happened to attend a presentation by architect Hiren Patel from Ahmedabad, and he was very blunt and very honest. He said that architects love design. Architects love to design. Architects don't love money. I mean, we are really very bad at asking for fees and recovering those fees. So he said, I would appoint an accountant. So he actually appointed an accountant, and he said that I love design. I love to design, and my accountant loves money. So he does my job for getting the money. So one has to find one's own way about getting all the things right. Thanks.
I think what we usually lack while running an architecture firm is, like, we are totally focused on design. So we can't really focus on how to build a business out of it, right? So the good way is to collaborate with someone, or just hire someone at a post of business development, and he will do all the work for you, or she will do all the work for you. But the idea is you don't really have to be skilled in all the directions, right? You are good at design, do that, but hire people for other things that you are not good at. So that's the whole idea, I think. And collaboration is really the need of the moment, I think.
If I may just respond to one part of what he said. I had this interesting experience with a restaurateur friend. And when he started his restaurant, he said that every day I look around, I see no patrons in my restaurant, and the other places being filled up. So I used to take out a scooter and go around to see, if this restaurant is full, that restaurant is full, and wondering why his restaurant isn't full. And he said I used to be really nervous at my restaurant, nobody's coming to my restaurant. And he said on Saturday night my restaurant is overfull, and I'm even more nervous that now there are too many people, too many patrons. So are my chefs doing a good job? Or am I able to satisfy my customers? So I think in this business development kind of scenario, which currently happens, I think there is that very fine line that you have to actually be able to judge which projects to take, because there may be like hundreds of projects coming your way. But if you simply take too many, whether you're spreading yourself too thin. We hear of architects who do like large developments, etc. But then it's like a hit and miss thing. Some are hits and some are misses.
Good evening. Actually, I have not much to do with architecture. I'm a painter. But I realize that it is about creativity that we are talking about. And I feel that the development of an attitude towards creativity is what mentoring and learning is all about. So actually asking yourself those questions, whether the ups and downs in your career or the agony and ecstasy, if you can deal with, then you are okay to be in the creative realm. Otherwise, you have to look for other options, and there are many options today that where you are connected to architecture and yet not in that frame of mind where you cannot deal with those ups and downs. So I think if you are ready and you prepare yourself in a way in that entire learning process, which actually does not end, but I'm talking about the academic 5 years, where you can ask yourself whether you can deal with so many different things and go with the flow, then maybe the creative that energy is okay and that kind of life is okay for you. So it's very, very tricky and very obscure actually. You cannot put it into words, but that's what I feel. Yeah.
So I'll just end this with one more sharing. We've been working with research and development clients, and there is a very interesting formula they call C raised to the power of 3, where connect, co-create, collaborate and co-create. And I think a lot of firms abroad are using this in our profession, that even if you are a small or a boutique firm, you can actually collaborate with people with larger skill sets to address issues, and competitions are all about that. So I think this is one new direction which at least I have seen when we've collaborated with different dynamic consultants to do projects or address competitions. Okay, I'll move to the next question. This question is of course addressed to everybody, but the architects who are involved with academia will have more to say. So how can academia help in making students future ready, considering the requirement of the industry, and what are they doing in that direction, and what do even practitioners feel needs to be done? So it'll be interesting to get everybody's observations on this. So Rohit, we are going to do Satya Pe Satta. You're going to start with the first brother. They don't.
With no offense, because many of the people sitting in front of me were my teachers, but when I started working, at that time in Pune, the maximum height of project was 4 floors or 5 floors. Then suddenly I went to SPA Delhi and I was like, wow, I have come to some Disneyland with 20 floors, 30 floors kind of a building. So naturally the professions or the practicing professionals who were coming and teaching us were exposed to those kind of projects. I would not talk about commenting on design quality, but it's just the exposure of that project made them have more information. Knowledge is questionable, but information was definitely there. And as a student, you are always seeking information because knowledge cannot be taught. It will be your own introspection which will convert information into knowledge. So till few years back, I used to find Pune a typical tier 2 Peshwe city, ek se char sagra band. Everybody is like a laid back kind of a attitude, which has changed in last 5-7 years. Lot of actions have been happening, lot of development have been happening, and we are lucky to have lot of active professionals who are part of this development process. And I believe that many of them also have come into academics after having active careers. I know few people who are part of your MMCOA team also. So they are like the key catalyst between industry and academics. So if we can bridge this gap between getting these key resources on board who have in their past career have been into industry and now they want to do academics. Also the kind of curriculum which we teach, we are heavily dependent on design centric curriculum. Honestly, I believe that beyond design is also there are many things in terms of information management, documentation, presentation, technology, because I was zapped because I was part of Pune University Board of Studies team that we still use textbooks like Chudle and which were like now completely aged or not relevant, but we still teach people timber truss, we still teach people in terms of old technologies, and we lack teaching students or exposing them to new technologies like simple thing, aluminum formwork, how do you make shell plans, or pile foundation, how do you do a pile center line drawing. So purely it is a lack of industry getting connected with academic, and if you have right team or set of people, the early you bridge this gap, the results will be much faster, is what my personal belief.
Yeah, I think some of this was answered earlier as well, but I'd say that there are two things that one in terms of the education itself. Unfortunately, I'll talk about my experience in my own college and how it continues to be, which is that it is structured around the idea that there are solitary geniuses, that some guy will stand in front and present the scheme to the jury and defend the scheme, and you better know what you're talking about and come up with a brilliant idea, and the onus is on you. The whole weight of the world is on your shoulders at the jury. And as soon as you come out of college and you're working with any project, you understand that at the heart of this work is the idea of collaborating, right? Of working with others, listening to them, having empathy, understanding what the project is about. I mean, to know these things quickly, because you lose time, and it's not really about ego. It's about how you sort of work with others to come to something that is then meaningful. And our structure right now in the design studio is not at all structured like that. It is, the poor guy standing in front defending against the world. So that, I think, is something to think about. How do you work with others? How do you negotiate? How do you compromise? How do you come to a shared idea of what the project is? And that's not easy. I mean, everybody talks about collaboration and co-creation. It isn't an easy thing to do because of ego, because of our own understanding of the great superior genius like Utzon or Korea or Doshi. These giants are standing on top of us. In good ways as well, but there is that burden of history. The second thing is the idea that you're preparing people for industry, and I have a huge problem with that. Of course, yes, I mean, you want to make competent people who know how to use, who understand construction, who know how to operate in the field, who are useful in an office, etc. But I think in the rush to do that, and that's what I started my presentation with, that in the rush, there are crises all around us. The world is burning, there's all kinds of impending doom. But at the heart of all that is our humanity. And so the question of what we should do should be before how to do it. What am I going to do here? Or what are we together going to, how are we addressing the issues of that project and the larger concerns we have? How do you prepare someone to ask that question? And if that question is asked properly, then you will learn how to do the aluminum shuttering, because that's the answer. Or you will learn how to do whatever it takes to come to the solution. You can't teach a student in 5 years everything about construction. You can't touch most of the things. You'll kind of peripherally touch things. But I think to instill the idea that you're constantly learning and constantly improving yourself and figuring out a way to dance through all of the things that are coming at you. Again, these are easier said than done, because we struggle with it every time there's a new project. We don't know how to articulate that question at the beginning, and it takes some time. So I think these two things, the idea of negotiating and coming to a shared consensus, and the idea that it takes a certain slowness, a certain sort of introspection to come to what it is we need to do. And that's an important beginning before we say whether not to do the timber truss or not, or yes to do the timber truss. I mean, there's a question before that step.
I think I completely agree with the points shared by both the panelists. And I just want to add one more thing, that, the architecture defines the built space, the city that we are living in. And that goes very much hand in hand with the lifestyle, and that lifestyle is changing every 3 years. Which is, and I don't know which, any colleges that are teaching AR or VR in their curriculum. I think it needs to be revised every 3 or 4 years and start to adapt all the technological advancements that are happening in the lifestyle, so that the profession doesn't lag behind, the student doesn't lag behind, and when they come into the profession, they know how to, they know better than the ones who are already in the field, because they know the technology more than the old guys out there. So I think that is something that as academia we can do, and I think apart from all the other points that the panelists have said.
Yeah, I think I'll slightly take what Bijoy said and Rohit said forward. I think one of the things which I constantly experience is we're never seen as the doctor of the project, and one of the reasons is because our architects are not well equipped with fundamental knowledge. And I think practical and applied insights at an academic level are very, very important. So wherever I have been on some kind of an advisory role, I've been telling them, take students to sites to actually show them what they're studying in theory. For example, in one of the projects, we had an incident where the civil engineer from the structural engineer's office didn't check the shear reinforcement. So I had to tell him that, don't you know what is a bending moment diagram? So if he is the doctor, if the shear reinforcement links were not in place, we would have had an accident at site. And slowly, as projects are going to more sophistication and complexity, there is the legal issue of indemnity also entering in. So there are huge implications. In fact, on larger projects, we have to take an indemnity insurance, because if there is a failure on account of design, we have to insure ourselves. So there are complex issues like that, and in that light, I think we need to equip students with appropriate technologies, and I'm using appropriate with little bit of responsibility, because look at what the current Pritzker laureate has done. He's used the local technologies in Burkina Faso to create what he's created. I mean, it's one of the poorest countries in the world. So that kind of applied and practical knowledge at a student level is required. I can just give an example from my student days, and Dharap sir is an example of whatever he would teach in landscape design, there would be an afternoon studio, voluntary, we had to go to site and see it. So there was this bring back that whatever we were taught in terms of planting or hardscaping in third year actually was learned. The same Chaudhary sir did in construction technology, or some of the structural engineers who taught us engineering did in their this thing. So as a result, at the end of the 5 years, the fundamental knowledge of how a building works and what are the risk points were very clear. The other thing which should be encouraged apart from professional training, which is sometimes a formality, is that why can't students work in all their vacations and while studying? And this is a practice we used to have in our school and which has paid good dividends to a lot of people. Because by the time you graduate, you start understanding what may work, what may not work, and you understand the other side of the profession. So, and the last thing is, I think there are too many students per batch. I mean, that is something which I don't know how to, who will fix it, but 120 students a batch, 80 students a batch in one college, the whole auditorium was filled. They said this is one batch, one's 80. I'd gone to give a sharing on hotel design. I said 180 students per batch. I mean, so how can you give quality when you have this quantum thing, I have no solution for that. I wish there was a solution. But I think this quantum-based theory has to go off soon. I'll open it to the audience. Please participate. Kushru, your views. Ravi sir, anybody? Atul.
Sir, in the present situation, why are we not talking about the cause, and why is it always about the skills? Like, you should know Rhino, or you should know this skill or that skill. But why are we doing it? The cause. It's just because we want to create a vision for the clients, which we can do through a sketch or a model. Then why a 3D? So no one talks about the cause, but it's always about the skills. So as an architects, we are visionary or we are skilled people. Or we are both. If we are both, then we stand at a level, or otherwise.
I think what you think like learning a Rhino is a skill. From my perspective, a good sketching would be a better skill than that. So it depends person to person or student to student what skill they want to acquire, what they feel they are comfortable with. So it's not like forcing yourself to do something that you are not comfortable doing.
Why is it Rhino or any software skill, not only Rhino, it is considered as a development or fast communication?
I will try to give you answer from a purely commercial business perspective because I come from the client side organization. Most of our projects, we are now converting them on a BIM model. The idea of converting them on a BIM model is that we can have a better accuracy of quantification. We can do early clash detection. We can give a single holistic picture of a project, because when you go into practice, you will always find this typical chaos that services consultant says, I have a R1 revision of architecture. Structure Y will say, I have R4 revision. Architect says, but I have been working on R8 revision. So there is no single truth of model being made available. Now, these are tools. They are not the expression of your concept. The architect's thinking power changes from person to person. But when you want to explain it to client, maybe client do not have that much maturity or that much visualization as a individual person you are having. End of the day, you need to make him aware about your thought process, and what is the best medium to explain him is to show him multiple options of visualization. Sketch could be one option, but when you go into hard reality of practical application, if you don't know Revit, you can't do a BIM model. If you can't do a BIM model, you don't know how to operate Navisworks to find out clash detection, or you don't know how to do design management of your drawings. Maybe it may seem stupid to have too much theoretical kind of a practice, but in real world, if your client is going to spend 400 crores or 200 crores on a project, he needs a proper reliable system, and what software offers them is this system. So that's why as an architect you must be at least exposed. I'm not saying you must be master, but you must be exposed to these kind of systems.
But the student knowing the real cause would be more.
But as a student, you should
driven.
have, yeah.
Like someone in the audience said that after a few years, you start losing interest. It's because we don't know the cause for which or for what we are working. Then we get lost in after some time.
But like I'm sure your visualization skills or your power of intellectualness is not there with a client. That's why he has hired architect. Otherwise, he would have himself designed the building. So if you want to express your feelings to someone else, you need some medium. You can't just be thinking that your brain waves would be gone instantaneously to client's mind. And these are the mediums. Not a single medium is right or wrong.
Yes.
I would like to add, somebody has already said it, that what you want to do is far more important than how you do it. There's a certain amount of confusion about communicating, whether you talk in French or Marathi or Hindi, or you show a drawing or show a sketch. These are at the end of the day methods of communication, which in India and all over the world today happen to take place before there is any understanding as well. So we have a lot of media, glamour, spectacle-driven events which are happening where nobody really knows what is happening, and it's not even important to know what is happening because it's so much fun to see the process that whether the destination is important or the path is important, who cares? So, and this is something which comes from the age of 3 to 4 to 5. That's when you really know and do things on your own without being conditioned by the adult world. Luckily, I got into college, and within the first year or two, the senior students told me, look, nobody's going to teach you anything, you better learn for yourself. I think one of the reasons why we have almost 30 colleges in Pune and all of them getting filled with students, what does happen is that students realize pretty early, maybe a little in the subconscious, that they have to figure it out for themselves. And what they have to figure out, today you are offered smartness as a way of figuring out, or if you're lucky and you have some sense of values, you might learn what it is that you want to do. Now, what gives you meaning in life? Normally, this comes from your parents, from your upbringing, from things which are intangible, and everything else. I mean, there's a book I remember saying that everything that is worth knowing I learnt in KG, which is very true. I mean, look at a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old child using finger paint and painting. This is what happens before he grows up to start showing his work to his parents to ask them how it is. The stage before that is the child is drawing and doesn't care a damn whether you like it or not. He'll paint on the wall, he'll paint on the floor, and that is actually what we have to recall. And if you get on to what you have to learn and learn the importance of it, I think everything else falls in place. Whether you do an internship or whether you do a post-graduation, these are all minor details. It's like traveling by train or by plane, as long as you know your destination. So I think that should be the focus.
I just want to cite 4 examples to you, and it's to do with the hand drawings, and they are all global projects. I think communication, yes, communication is what, but I think the expression from here is even more important. So I was reading a book on Richard Rogers, and he said that when their entry reached, the Pompidou Center entry, the drawings were in 2 parts. The drawings were torn. But Philip Johnson saw the future in them because the way the drawings were drawn. Same is the case with Yudzor's proposal for the Sydney Opera. Eero Saarinen picked that project as the head of the jury because he saw that expression. They were pencil drawings. Or even the latest example of even Zaha Hadid's that Hong Kong project which never got built, or paintings, or even the Guggenheim Helsinki project was all hand drawn. So the expression and what you want to communicate through that expression is very important. And then there are sophisticated tools, as Rohit rightly said, which are deployed to kind of clinically get certain things right in terms of quality, cost, time, life cycle cost, so on and so forth. But I think the expression comes from here, no? That nobody can teach.
So that would be more important for a student to know in the schooling period, to know the cause or the reason. And then other things would come secondary, right, sir?
Yeah, very provocative, no? Everybody's jumping to answer. Yes, of course. I mean, isn't it wonderful if you had clarity in what you wanted to say? And that's also not so easy. So yes, you have to have that kind of clarity and then find the medium to express it. But I'll give you. I mean, this is a little bit of a funny example. And having said all of that about collaboration, I'm going to sort of contradict myself. So we discovered VR. Said, man, now it'll be so easy. We'll get our clients to wear those goggles. We'll get them into the buildings, and they'll be completely convinced, right? And we started this process. We were doing a house with my wonderful friends from Trichy, and they saw everything in VR, and they didn't like any of it. And in the old days, that obfuscation, the model, the drawings, they kind of get it, they don't get it, and you're sort of behind that, just hiding behind that. So I don't know, I mean, yes, it's fantastic, you should learn all these incredible skills, but sometimes too much information is also tricky. So I don't know, I mean, yes, you have to collaborate. Now I'm listening to my clients because they've seen everything, and so we're changing the design to kind of fashion it in the way that they imagine their home. But this new age is now bringing more collaborators onto the table, more active collaboration, which we have to be prepared for. And that's not easy. So this idea of finding a clear voice to speak in, it's the myth of the genius architect, that somehow I know what is of value and truth in the world, and I am now going to give this or manifest this truth in the world. And that's unfortunate. I mean, yes, you may have a great idea, but it has to then be dented and corrupted and mutilated by all of those negotiations that make real buildings. And it includes everything that, he spoke about. It includes, what Rahul was, talking about, this idea that the projects are the result of all of those negotiations. And so, on the one hand, I agree with you, but it is a fight. Sometimes a good result comes at the end of it, that like the BIC, which has so many people for so long in the trenches together, and so we don't take credit for it. It's everyone together coming to make something of value. So embrace the new technology, but be ready for what it portends. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
I will share. I completely agree with Nachiket that architecture is not taught in college. It is outside college also. Because fortunately or unfortunately, I failed in first year. I was topper in design, but engineering I failed miserably. At that time there was no ATKT. So once you failed, you have to appear next year. Okay, 1 year you have to on your own. But what I did at that time, my friend and me, morning after breakfast on bicycle, we have to go all around Pune and see whatever construction is going on. For full 1 year, whatever I learnt on site was, I was knowing, in 5 years they were teaching this, I was already knowing my first year what was. So that was the actually good part that I felt. So because there were no media, no internet, because I am talking about in 1970, that was my first year. Only 1 or 2 magazines, Architecture Record or Progressive Architecture, 2 magazines, not Indian magazine also. So no mobile phone. So how to get the knowledge actually? So the knowledge is I got outside the college. I always ask my trainees that now we have 3 days holiday, what you are going to do? And you come on Monday and tell me what you have done. Have you visited any site? Have you gone for sketching? What? They are least interested in these things. So then how they can learn? Not actually, it is your own thing that you should go and learn. Nobody will teach you or ask you to do that. But you should do on your own, and that is the learning.
I would also like to just say what Patwardhan sir had said, Nachiket Patwardhan sir had said many years ago. So तुम्हाला आठवतं की मला माहित नाही पण he said that if you want to be a good architect, you can also be a good cook, and then you have to imagine the recipes. So I wonder how Rhino can help us imagine the recipes. So it's not just sketching, or there are many other things to architecture. Just this was 20-30 years ago probably.
Yeah, so again, talking about the academia, I think that the connection of any learning to the real world is very important for me. Like I went to the art school and nobody really very actively in my 4th or 5th year talked about how to put your work in a show. I mean, whether I can clutter it up like a shop, or I can give great pauses in between the works, so the viewer gets into one work, comes out of it and goes into the next. Nobody talked about all these things when we were learning. So that connect with the real world. Also, a lot of outdoor travel, looking at all the crafts, the kadiyas working on site, they themselves physically doing it. I think these are the things that connect you to how the building shapes up, and that developing that understanding out of the room, out of the classroom, I think has to be much more in the academic realm for me.
Hello. This reminds me about my college days. In first year, his father was Rohit's father was our teacher, and he gave us assignment Stabile by Alexander Calder. He introduced Alexander Calder and gave Stabile. Because of that, and all students could come out with different solutions. Because of that, my interest in sculptures and other things was, I am interested in that. Later on, I saw many things in Australia and other things, many stabiles at different places. And then I realized the importance of first year's that assignment. There were so many such kind of assignments which his father gave us, and which was really inspiring. At that time, we didn't know the importance of that. But now I realize that sculpture also plays a very important role in architecture also. It gives something about, you understand the form, quality of form. And fortunately, I could see so many. There is one sculptural walk which happens at Sydney every year. 1 month, and all big sculptors used to come to Sydney in spring time there, in October, November. And we could see a number of ways how people can, sculptors can play with forms. So that also provides a good insight in architecture. So I think we should see beyond architecture, sculpture, paintings and other things that can inspire you and can develop your architectural skills also. Thank you.
I think I don't want to delay too much. The main question was whether institutes can create industry-ready graduates. I think there could be some repetition, but first of all, Korea himself has said in his book, he said, I don't know whether architecture can be taught, but it can be learned. First of all, that's very important. There are many subjects which are taught, but according to me, there are 4 verticals under which all this can be covered. So, aesthetics, technology and skills, and humanity. So the first 3 verticals could be taught. They are more or less tangible and they could be taught in the colleges. But the humanity is one subject which actually creates wisdom, because information is not a knowledge. Information along with the experience gets converted into knowledge, and knowledge with the understanding of humanity gets converted into wisdom. And it takes a long time. I'm struggling at the age of 75. Whether I have learnt anything, I'm still struggling. Second thing, you spoke about the visiting faculty or professional. In NID, we have now about 1,200 students under 22 different disciplines, and there are about 120 core faculty. There are about 450 visiting faculty. So altogether there are about 600 faculty, and practically it becomes 1 to 2 proportion. I'm sure that colleges will not be able to afford that when they are working on the economics and all those things. But certainly this is important. The participation from professionals is very important. Recently we have changed in NID the methodology. We have 22 verticals, but we are allowed to take up to 40% credits from the non-core subject. If I have taken in product design, I can take about 40 credits from non-product design subject, which actually widens the base of learning, and that's very important, I think, in architecture. Thank you.
So I'll now take the last question for the day, and this is stemming from the fact that whenever we meet architects, we meet students, there's a lot of talk about how our cities are deteriorating. So, what are your views on how students could be sensitized on the how their projects could connect to the cities they are in, and how can their projects help the city? Because in practice, we find that there is a big gap. There are UFOs that are suddenly landed on sites with no sensitivity to the context. But at an academic level, what is being done to bridge that gap as to how your project is responding to the city?
I think when I was doing my master's in urban design, somewhere down the line, the ego of the architect got diluted. And I realized that in any public project or in any design project for that matter, people are the paradigm. If you are not thinking about user and you are thinking about the form that you want to create for the city, then you are obviously in the wrong direction. Think about the user and you will contribute to the city. That is, I think, as short as I can say.
Well, the first, I think, is Vikas himself as an example of the way that one engages with the profession. So, I'll name three practices. We work in a very traditional way. We sit in the office, we wait for the client to show up. If we're lucky, someone comes and then we get the work. But that paradigm is changing. That's rapidly changing. And in Bangalore, we have a company called Sensing Local, a studio called Sensing Local. Look them up. They're an incredibly innovative practice that engages with community and creates opportunity for engagement. And that's the future, that you go out, at least in my opinion. That's one. The second is Compartment S4. Some of you may know them. They are also doing regular interior design and architecture projects, but they are also out there doing workshops with communities to invent ways in which to create engagement. And the third is Matter, of course, Riturajan Mansi's wonderful practice in Goa, which has now started doing architecture, but before that, just like Vikas is a portal where information is disseminated and they're creating a dialogue with communities. So these three ways in which one engages, I think the old paradigms of practice, and we are a dying breed as a practice where you would sit and just wait for projects to appear, that we need to get out there, and if there's anything to be done in the city, you're not going to get an invitation from the chief minister or the IAS officer to please come and grace us with your wonderful ideas. You will have to create the opportunity for that engagement. So you as in we as architects, if we're going to curse the city, then we have to figure out a way to engage with it. And there's a fourth example, and that's Narasimhan from Bangalore, who's part of Venkatramanan and Associates. And he has for the longest time, so the practice is a huge sort of commercial practice, but Naresh himself is involved in, he's responsible for Church Street, which through his own initiative was redeveloped and is one of the best streets in the country, I dare say, just like Prasanna Desai here, who's another practitioner who's out there sort of doing stuff. And he's also now revamping all of the drainage systems within Bangalore, just like Morphogenesis scheme years ago. So I guess I would say that's the way that maybe one could imagine we bring to bear our concerns as a community, as architects, in terms of design, in terms of mobilizing those ideas, and that we don't wait for good things to happen to us. So I applaud Vikas for his own sort of initiative in sort of creating those ways in which one communicates and gets word out that these are valuable things to pursue.
My belief is that why cities are growing, because people get opportunity. If you were not getting opportunity, people would not have come to Pune. So if you see the rise of Pune city over last 40-50 years, it is the opportunity linked with monetary gains. I may sound little commercial, but end of the day, people will come, gather, densify a location which offers them better opportunity. Now, obviously, because we are so-called Lokshahi, our political leadership will find opportunities to convert this into their own individual gains. And you have been seeing this over last 20 years, a steady conversion of areas which are having better potential to exploit them further. Like Pune city now have got unified DCPR, which allows you to get 3.5 FSI. Now in your architecture college, you have never been taught on how to consume 3.5 FSI on a piece of land, because that land has certain potential. What would happen to parking? What would happen to water demand? What would happen to other kind of nightmares? We are completely taken aback. And then you will find two distinctive divisions. One who are calling themselves as sustainable development or environmentalists, who would want to have a proper growth, and then there is a other type of a breed who wants to commercially exploit things. Whether right or wrong, let's not go into it, but fact of the matter remains that your cities will grow. When they grow, because there is an opportunity, you will keep on having this kind of high density problem, associated issues. And as an architect, we need to find intelligent solutions to manage these kind of problems, rather than saying that no, we should not have additional FSI, or we should not build 30-floor towers or 60-floor towers, because that is not in our hand. It's in the way the city is growing. And I believe that collective contribution in terms of technology evolution, or getting into sustainable development, or getting into, let's say, practices like proper designing of rainwater harvesting, getting the solar benefit, getting the sewage treatment plant which really works and gets you water recycled, are some of the technology driven tangible initiatives. But design wise, I would take a residential development. Each flat cannot be a Vastu compliant flat, because in your land you will have 4 directions: north, south, east and west. It is the sheer ingenuity of an architect to come out with a design which gives the best potential for that land, rather than saying that no, this land will not have so much of potential, it will go out of control. We as an architect should accept the fact that whether we like it or not, development is going to happen. Now, how we can make this development more sustainable? What are the measures as an architect we can bring in? Because end consumer doesn't know anything. He is struggling to get his apartment. Like today, fringe cities of Pune, people buy a 1-bedroom apartment in 8 lakhs. Within outskirts of Pune, it is 50 lakhs. And within city, Kadamsa like a zone, a standard mid-segment residential housing is around 1 crore. Now, the affordability criteria completely tipsy-topsy your design. So, you should accept the fact that there is going to be development. How best we can manage this development is what I believe would be the way forward.
I want to cite an example. This is pre-COVID, where me and Bijoy were on the NASA Thesis award jury, which was curated by Geeta Balakrishna Ethos. And I think I think 2 people won the award, and both had done fantastic site analysis in terms of the impact of their project on the city now and in the future. So in terms of a now and then situation, in whether it is creating a civic realm, whether it is the impact of landscape and ecology, whether it is rainwater harvesting, sewage treatment and so on. And this was, I think, only 2 entries out of 42 entries we saw. So that itself talks the volume. And I think site analysis being seen as a part of a 4 site box and what happens inside, but site analysis and the realms of site analysis and its urban design and urban environmental impact is never being addressed, at least in the juries I have been visiting to. In some schools it is, but they are very few. So in practice also, what I'm saying is very difficult. For example, the urban urban forest project took 3 years of convincing, and then after 3 years of execution, and even still we get remarks from the client that I wasted land, or we convince the client to adopt one street which used to get very dirty, and they have an NGO. So it is difficult, but I think somewhere there has to be a collective approach to adopt the context around and bring that, extend the sensitivity of the projects into those contexts. But if it starts at architecture school, which is a cultural thing, then I think by the time students are into the realms of practice, then whether you're handling developers, whether you're handling corporate clients, institutional clients, individual clients, I think it will help them educate clients. Because client education is a big thing also. You also learn a lot. But it's very important to, be patient and be addressing that cause. So I think it should be site analysis and the urban design connections and its impact on the project. I think it should be a mandatory thing. It can't be an optional thing. I think urban designers will be able to reflect better.
Again, I will one incident during college days when I was in final year. That time, Patwardhan gave one lecture on river development, and because of that, I got inspiration for urban design in larger sense. And at that time, in 71-72, I selected a topic which is pedestrianization of Lakshmi Road. Then my teacher started seeing me from top to toe. एकदा असं काय वेडा आहे का काय असं, that kind of thing. And then he asked me to explain what you want to say. Then they say कि you can't take a urban design project. You have to take along with some architectural project. So I decided to take a central area redevelopment project. At Huzur Pagar, that was the land which I selected, and I designed a central area redevelopment. The point here is how one gets inspiration. That is the point. And after that, I started, at that time there were no this kind of thing, urban design and this thing. Later on, I saw many different urban design projects in foreign countries, but this was the inspiration thing which started right at the. But for all this, you need passion. Passion is very important. If you have passion, then automatically you get rasta mil jata hai, that kind of thing. Okay.
I think we'll take one last reflection or observation, and then I think we've already run out of time. That's what I'm told. So, anybody wants to contribute anything?
I've forgotten one thing. I will advise students after graduation, they can work for 2-3 years, collect money, and visit some places abroad. For example, Sydney. You will learn more than what you learn at urban design courses. Just by seeing, you go there for 1 month, that will teach you everything. This is my advice to students.
I'd like to say that this was a really diverse and interesting evening, and to see, firstly, with Rohit, I never really got to understand what you do for so many years, even though we've known each other for 30 plus years. And to show the way you showed it in depth, really, for me, was a personal eye-opener in terms of what really goes into it. Architects hate project managers. So I have new respect for what you do and how you explained it. Vijay, thanks for coming all this way for share your thoughts with us. And Vikas, it was amazing to see what you've done, and I think Ravi said that you explained your journey in a beautiful way. I'm going to look at more of your work and see what you're up to and sort of learn from it. And as always, Rahul, there's always so much to learn from you, and the way you explained actually what you do, and the way you've convincing a client at your own cost not to do something is a brave step. So I learned so much from all of you. So thanks so much for having this. Girish, thanks for and whoever envisioned this. I thought it was envisioned really well. So thank you.
We as human beings are greedy. I mean, what you said, I'm just continuing to that. Who is more or who is less? That's the question. Fortunately, in architectural education, we are taught to have a passion for designing or passion for learning. And we are not taught or we are not cultured in a way where, you want to become, I mean, we always talk about being a successful architect. In literal terms, we are taught to become a good designer, I mean, but we are never taught in a way where, you want to be really rich as against other professions, let it be medical or engineering. So I really thank myself, thank God that I'm an architect and I'm not as greedy as, what you see around. Thanks.
I just want to add one small incident to what Ravi said. So the day I left Edifice and told them I'm starting my own firm, one of the founders of Edifice, Sanjay Srinivasan, you see Ravi Sarangan as the public face, but Sanjay is the design brain in the studio. And both are like mentors to me. They were like family. They are still like family. So Sanjay said one very interesting thing, which some of you may not like, but I'll say it. He said, whatever you do, Rahul, make profit. Because some of the big masters went broke. And he referred to Khan, Cobb and everybody. And I think it's important to make money. I mean, there's nothing wrong in it. I mean, I don't know why architects are averse to making money. It's relative how much, but if you're not making profit, then why are you running a firm? Then you should open an NGO then. That's my take on it.
I'll refer to your example,
Yeah.
How you make money is more important, because I would refer to your example where your client said that why to have such a big green space rather than I would build a glass box and a commercial building. He would have got more returns out of it.
I just wanted to say one thing. When you become old, all the credit is given to you. But here today, credit must go to the young Raghunandan. Please. And of course, Ujjwala ma'am. So they are the one who has vision of this conference goes to them, especially Raghunandan. I'm very happy that our young staff is taking up leadership and we are growing. Thank you.
Thank you. Indeed, a very interesting and knowledge-gaining session where we could draw our imaginations around the experiences shared by our panelists and our other architects and professionals sitting in the audience. We have a lot to take home. I call upon Architect Raghunandan sir to deliver the vote of thanks.
Listening to the panel discussion was indeed actually enriching, and I wish we could have more time to have more questions and have more discussions. However, all good things must end at height of elation. Events such as this cannot be possible without the support of and efforts of a team. So I'd like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to our honorable management, who has always been receptive and ready for anything that our college needs. We are grateful to our Executive President, Honorable Principal Sri B.G. Jadhav sir, for sparing his valuable time and spending it with us. I am sincerely thankful to our panelists, Architect Biju Ramachandran, Architect Rohit Sadesai, Architect Vikas Pawar, and a special thanks to Architect Rahul Kadam for playing the role of both a panelist and the moderator. And I also thank Architect Sunil Patil, though he couldn't make it today, but his support was always there. We are grateful for all your enthusiastic response and encouragement. Heartfelt thank to Dr. Ujjwala Palsule and Architect Girish Doshi for shaping this event from concept to fruition. Thank you for keeping your doors open every time we came asking for suggestions, guidance and motivation. I thank all our dear guests for accepting the invitation and sharing your valuable time with us. We look forward to your continued support and association for a mutually beneficial growth. I thank all the faculty members, our administrative staffs and volunteering students for the seamless coordination and sincere efforts to make this event possible. A special mention to architect Sanika Kulkarni for being there at every step of the way. I congratulate and thank the brochure team, Rajvi Patil, Tanisha Lahane, Rachita Chodia, Ojal Surana and Pradnya Sheila. I thank the current and previous council, student council, for taking ownership and looking after each and every aspect of today's arrangements. Thanks to Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute for providing us with this auditorium, our printing vendor Mr. Nikhil for accommodating every request even till the last moment, and to our catering team led by Mr. Ganesh, who has planned something very sumptuous for us tonight. Before moving for dinner, I request all the guests to kindly fill out the feedback form that is there in your kit, and you can please hand it over to the volunteer students. They'll be happy to collect it. So with this note, I would request everyone to join us for the dinner. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
We have now come to an end of a very interesting evening, and we embrace the opportunity to place on record our hearty thank you to all the panelists and the audience present today.
I request everyone to please proceed for the dinner, followed by the dignitaries. Thank you.
Thank you one and thank you all.
I request the volunteers to direct the audience to the dining area.